right now, and then we can get started. All right, guys. So first things first, let's get the homework out of the way, okay? Let me post them real quick on the Discord
Yeah,
chat.
I definitely did my homework.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Like we can walk through it, see what's up, what you guys are thinking about. Um, you know what sucks about this headphones is I can only hear on one side, which is disgusting, right? Okay, where are we at? Bing. I gotta double check if I'm not muted. Yeah, on the recording, dude. I went. Remember when I went and did a whole like video with you, Jackson, and then the whole time it was muted.
Yeah,
That sucked. That big sucked. Okay. Um, doing this. All right, Jackson. Yours was the most toughest one, so I understand if you couldn't find it. At least try
yeah.
it. At least try.
Well, I looked at it like earlier, but it was kind of hard.
It's a hard position, man. It's a hard position. Don't worry about
Yeah,
it.
it's kind of fucked.
All right, hold up. Okay, so let's first let me switch the recording to the Discord right now. So we can see this. Um. Okay, so for the first one, right? Can you let's see. Can you see what I'm looking at? Yeah. You see what I'm looking at? I'm screen sharing right now. Hello? Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
we can see.
Yeah? There we go. Okay, so this is Ella's question, okay? So I put what is wrong with black's position and how can we and white win a pawn, okay? I'm asking Ella specifically. I'm not asking anybody else. But Ella, what is wrong with this position specifically? I don't know if Ella is here. Hello?
I don't think she. Oh wait, she is.
Oh, she's
She
here.
said she can't unmute.
She can't unmute? She can't unmute.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
that's what she's saying.
That's a good way to get out of it. All right, let's ask Michaela then. Michaela, what do you think is wrong with this position specifically?
Maybe that the horses aren't protecting.
Not the what? Sorry, you were breaking up.
Uh, the horses aren't anything. The knights.
The Knights? Black's Knights?
The knights aren't.
Hello? I'm not sure if you're breaking up or it's my fault. It's my problem right here.
Right. Maybe not driving.
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of hard to
But
hear because you're breaking up.
oh,
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think what you said was the knights, right? The two knights, both the E7 and D7 knights, are both inhibiting um Black's bishops.
Figured it out. I unmuted.
Oh, Ella, you're unmuted. You're back.
I'm back.
You're back, baby. All right. So now that you assess the position, right? The knight on E7, the knight on D7 is both inhibiting both bishops. What's a good way to win a pawn here for white? What do you think you can do here?
Uh, Like, hold up.
Yeah, we're holding up.
Do you guys hear an echo?
Yeah.
What was the question?
What can white do here to win a pawn here in this position?
They could bishop to f7.
Okay.
E7 or no f7.
Okay, king takes then.
And then, well, that's a pawn.
Yeah, but the king can just you just lost a piece, right? I'm not, that doesn't win a pawn. That just trades a bishop for a pawn. Even though bishop takes f7 is actually winning because the position's so bad. How is it winning though?
Because it exposes the king more.
No, because the knight can land itself on e6 here. It can land itself on e6. So if bishop takes f7 with check, king takes f7, knight g5 check, and let's say if king goes back to e8, knight e6 actually traps the queen on d8, right? So the king can only go to g8. So after knight e6, queen e8, knight takes c7. It's a fork between the queen and the rook. I think bishop takes f7 is pretty strong, but let's look for an attack that targets the f7 pawn but supports it. So bishop takes comes with checkmate basically. What's a way to defend bishop takes f7?
Knight to g5.
Yeah, knight to g5. So the only way black can stop the mate here on f7 is to play d5. And after d5, probably knight takes d5. And I mean, you already won a pawn, right? And your threat is actually knight takes c7, bishop takes f7. So the main reason this position's so bad for black is because these knights on e7 and d7 are restricting the scope of both bishops, and a move like knight g5, knight e6, because the bishop on c8 is covered, is possible in future ideas. All right, now let's go for Colin's position. So I asked Colin to assess the position first, right? To assess this position first, and then give me a line that can basically potentially mate black here, right? So Colin obviously failed this because all he cared about was just he gave me all these lines, and I'm just like, okay, you got to answer the first question first, right? When you're playing chess, you can't just start throwing moves out. You got to first assess the position, kind of understand it here. So let's first assess the position, okay? Now, let's look at the piece activity, right? This bishop on b4 is a bit misplaced, right? It shouldn't be here on b4. Our forces are attacking the king. There's a weak spot on h7. The knight can potentially plant itself on g5 because the bishop is reinforcing the knight on g5. The knight on b6 is misplaced because the knight on b6 is supposed to be on f6, right? But because of e5, knight d5, and somehow knight b6 inhibits the bishop on c8, the light square bishop, right? So the bishop is kind of stuck between the d7 pawn and the b7 pawn. The knight on c6 is completely dominated by the pawns on e5 and d4, right? Now, after we have assessed this position, that all of his material is on the queen side, then we can find the moves here, right? Now, Jackson, what do you think here would be a good move?
I think like stacking the bishop for like the Greek gift would probably work.
So a Greek gift, right?
Yeah.
All right, now let's calculate though. All right, so bishop takes h7, and that's check. King takes.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna show kind of the idea with let's jump to lead chess. So I can like put a tab and go like on it so we can go through it. Now I gotta switch the There we go. Oh. For some reason, I can't show it on my recording. There it is. Okay. Now here. Now let's go through it. Let's just make some stuff up. Bang, bang. Bang, bang. Knight c6. Let's say he plays knight b6. Okay. All right. Now, Michaela and Ella, right? So this is a common idea, which is called the Greek gift, and the Greek gift is potentially something that can win you the game because first we need to know if this knight can ever get itself back to f6 safely or f8 safely. The Greek gift does not work, and if this bishop is here, the Greek gift cannot work. So the Greek gift is actually bishop takes, king takes, knight g5, king g8, queen h5, right? How do you stop checkmate? You can't if you yeah. What's that?
Full screen.
See.
We can see your.
What's that?
We can't see your full.
Oh, I'm sorry. Trying to show my whole screen. Let's go change windows.
That analysis board. Yeah.
Yep, there we go. All right, sorry about that. So right here, right? Now this is a common trope where the Greek gift is potentially mating here on h7 and f7. And it's only possible because this knight can't go back on f6 or f8 safely, and this bishop can't be on e7, right? Now if the bishop was on e7 here, knight g5 wouldn't work because bishop would take, and this bishop is defending, right? And you would lose a piece right there. But because the bishop's misplaced on b5, this is a potential mate right here, right? How do you get out of it? You can't. f6, you can't even get out because the knight is covering the escape square, right? And if you play something like rook e8, you're still probably gonna lose the queen here. Like this, rook to e8, and mate is coming with bishop g5, right? If you try to move, like let's say you can't really stop it, right? And let's just checkmate, right? Checkmate. So now because of this, the only possible move black can do is king g6 to prevent queen h5. Now here we got 3 good moves. One is completely better than the other, and you have to calculate all of this from here. You have to calculate all of this from here, which makes the position kind of hard. And this is the reason why I showed Colin, because Colin has kind of an issue when it comes to I would say calculating or going without, like thinking through his moves, right? Now, if we do bishop takes h7, king takes h7, knight g5, king g6, if he escapes, we're just down a piece, right? So we look at first queen g4, but then f5. So let's put it on the board because it's a little bit difficult for you guys in this level. So queen g4, f5, right? Now, if you go here, maybe f4. If you do en passant, the king can escape. And if you do knight h7, king f8, and knight takes, you're losing here. You might have won a rook, but you lost 2 pieces for the rook, right? If you put on the engine, right, black is a little bit better. Now that we assess maybe f5, f4 can be an issue, let's look at queen d3, right? Queen d3, still, queen g4 is winning, and queen d3 is still winning. But you still have f5, and pawn takes, and king takes, and then knight g7, h7. And it's just very, very difficult to muster any type of attack here. This is still fine. Maybe knight g5 back and queen h7. But this is just not the best way, not the clearest way of path, right? Now, after king g6, what if we are able to check this king, but keep the idea of this queen not being able to be attacked? So each and every time queen g4s happen, you get attacked. Every time you go to d3, you get blocked, right? Now, another idea to get another pawn in with a check is h4, right? Now, if you notice, the king is running out of squares. If you go something like king f5, we already have queen d3, and then queen g4, and then after queen f3, the king is just gonna get mated from here, and that's checkmate, right? So you already noticed that the king is running out of squares. He can't go to h7 because the knight is covering. He can't go to f6 because the pawn's covering. He can go to f5, but bringing your king towards the center could potentially get you mated. And the king can only go to h6, but if he goes to h6, we win the queen on d7. And notice that I don't take on f7 here to win the queen with double check, just because I feel that this potentially opens up the rook. And why would I give him any type of compensation for his queen? Takes king h7 and maybe even queen to h5. The idea of this, you don't even need to take the queen. Right? Now, this is just all me spitballing, but what Colin failed to realize was, first, he needs to calculate if bishop takes h7 works. And then second, he needs to go and analyze all his opponent's pieces, his counterplay, before he makes a move. Now, after this, we're gonna jump into Jackson's game or homework, right? Now this one's a little bit more difficult. Let's go here. I gotta switch boards here as well on the recording as well. Okay, now you look at this one. When you look at this, right, this position, you see this position, guys? Hello? Did everyone fall asleep?
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah? All right, guys. I need more speaking. Okay. Now, Jackson, now let me ask you questions here. Who do you think is better? What do you think? What's the evaluation here? What do you think?
So I think white's better because white has like aggressive rooks, and the rooks are actually doing something, while the bishop and the rook in the corner are just sitting there, like not doing shit.
Okay. All right.
Plus,
Yeah.
white's dark square bishop is better in like cutting off like squares for the king, and it has more like control and space than black dark square bishop. And
Okay.
then also black's light square is just sitting there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what do you think the evaluation of this position should be?
I think maybe like +3 or like +2 to +4ish around.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I would think that too. Probably +5. It's because of that rook on a8, right? The rook on a8 is kind of misplaced. The bishop is pretty bad. The knight on d7 doesn't have a really good home. The bishop on e7, the light square bishop on e6, is kind of blockaded by its own pawns, if you see, right? Now,
Yeah.
I want you to find the worst piece on white's position. The worst piece.
The light square bishop.
That's what you think? That's our worst piece?
Yeah, because black has a lot of like locked in pawns on the light squares, and since it's more close position, the knight is more valuable because it can hop in those holes, like the hole on e5.
Okay.
especially if the knight wasn't there.
Well, what I kind of like am thinking is the worst piece in black's position or white's position is the knight on g3. And it's only because it's completely dominated by the light square pawns on h5, g6, f5, and e4, right? Let me just set this position up on my phone so we can go back to Lichess and try to make a moves in this position. So I'm just putting this ready. Oh goodness. How about I gotta jump to Lichess right now, so let's go. Just hopping back and forth. Position. Let me
Hello.
Yeah, hello. Hello.
I'm driving right now. I've been driving since I came on here. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, and I think the first time when I was talking, I guess I was just in a rough spot and I was breaking up, but
It's okay. You were in a tough spot, mentally not capable. I understand. Hard life. Yeah.
I had thought at least I'll be on here and I'll drive, but I can't really watch the pieces move as I drive. So I apologize, but next time I'll be ready to be engaged.
Don't worry. I'm recording as well, so like you can always look at the recording.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you.
See ya. Okay, so this position, blah blah blah. All right, I think this is the position, right? Looks like the position. I'm trying to jump in. All right, guys, are you able to see this?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Now, when you're looking at this position, we want to find the best squares for our pieces, right? This bishop, of course, is a bad piece. Potentially is a bad piece. But there's another piece that's even worse, right? This bishop's at least controlling some squares. It's controlling this square potentially in the future. And this knight, right? Now, what you want to spot is a hole. Like, this is called like configuration and visualization, right? So when you want to visualize your pieces, I kind of want to visualize my position where this knight is here on g5. That's a very good square. You can't kick the knight off so easily. The only way is this: if this bishop somehow comes here, or if this knight somehow comes here, which is very, very difficult because knight e5 is not possible. Knight to f8, king h8. I mean, it's very, very tough to move here, right? So now a move like knight h1, knight to f2, knight to h3, and knight to g5 becomes an idea here in this position. And this is the move that you should have spotted in this position, just because you're assessing which piece is your worst piece, and that's how you can get a better position. Like, if you were to find a move like rook a6 and rook c6, absolutely makes a lot of sense controlling this file, but we always have this move. We don't have to rush it. And first we need to put our other pieces on the most optimal squares, then go for these types of attacks, right? Now, when the knight is standing on g5, this doubling is very, very scary here for black. But first, you always have to first put your pieces in the most optimal squares, then you can start attacking. All right, now we're gonna be going over the minority attack. Okay, so I feel like Jackson knows what the minority attack is.
Yeah, I remember.
So don't tell them. I'm gonna ask Ella. Ella, what do you think the minority attack is about? What do you think it's about?
I think it's about like whatever team is losing, like what they can do to attack back.
Okay, so let me double check if my recording is. Hold on. So the minority attack is about racism. No, I'm joking. Okay, so the minority attack is this. When you have a minority on the queen side or king side. So these are two pawns, right? It's two pawns versus one, or basically three. It's versus three here. Versus two. So this is the minority. The minority is, the idea is to break down this whole structure. And you see that now you got three isolated pawns that can easily be targeted. Not something you want to do in the like complete end game, but that's something that you want to do when you have like knights and bishops, right? Now these are targets easy to attack. Now if you don't do anything, we're just gonna be taking, and now this is a backwards pawn because the pawn can't be pushed forward because the pawn can take. This is what we call a backwards pawn, and that is a viable idea that you can do. So this is what is kind of like a plan as a minority attack at a lower level. When you get to higher levels, the minority attack isn't really a good option, but I want to give you kind of more of a basis first to understand what the minority attack is. And when you're playing against players, at the very least, you already have a plan, and sometimes they don't even know how to respond to it. So let's go to the next chapter of how we can get to the minority attack. Okay, so there's lots of ways that we can get it to. So there's from the Queen's Gambit decline, this is just the Queen's Gambit. Knight pawn takes, right? Notice that bishop g5, e3. Now we're just in the minority attack. So moves like a3, b4, b5 to break this down is always an option here. So that's just one way that we can get to it. Another way is from the Caro-Kann, right? The Caro-Kann, e4, c6.
Why are you saying it like that?
I don't know.
No,
right now, this is another structure that you can get from, right? A minority attack with like a6, b5, b4. Right now, bishop f5. Now, ideas normally come from once we're able to play and break this down. Let's say all these pawns, this pawn is traded off, right? The knight on a5 can go on c4, that can make an outpost on c4. So when you're playing, when there's a backwards pawn, you want to blockade it so that the knight on a5, or so that the knight can plant itself here. So then we can like double and eventually move this knight out of the way to target the pawn on c3. So when there's a backwards pawn, blockading pieces, the best piece to blockade a pawn is always the knight. Now I wanted to mention the move orders. So there's a bit of a move order thing when it comes to the minority attack here. So like here, there's a move order thing here with e3 and queen c2. So what do you think e3 and queen c2? Why queen c2 first instead of e3?
You're asking me.
I'm asking everybody. I'm asking somebody to answer this question, right?
Oh, it's just like F2. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So why do you think queen c2 is different to e3 here in this position?
Um, I think it helps like I don't know how to like explain it, but like it helps with like if you push e4 in the future, and like you could create a battery at like d3 when the bishop goes there.
No, that's not correct on what I'm trying to ask. But the idea with queen c2, right, is to inhibit bishop f5, which is not that big of a deal. So if you play e3 here, like after c6, e3 here, you play bishop f5, and now queen c2 is impossible, and bishop d3 would trade your good piece for this bad piece, right? Now that's kind of a small difference. It's not really that good of a move. I'm just giving it you the idea, because after, let's say, queen f3, bishop g6, bishop takes, and queen takes, this is potentially better for white, just because these double pawns, knight f3, knight h4, so that the minority attack a3 b4 can potentially be played with rook b1 after knight takes on g6, so that the bishop isn't attacking the rook on b1. Right now, I only mentioned this just because it can happen in one of your games, and you can always be aware of that. So when you see bishop f5, just know you can either play queen c2 for e3, or you can play the queen f3 and trade everything. And then for the example part, okay? So let's go for the examples. So here, so black played bishop e6, completing development. How does white start the minority attack? How can we start the minority attack?
A3 probably.
Yeah, so a3, very, very simple, right? Just a3. So good. Now, black plays a pretty passive move. This allows white to continue the minority attack. Okay, what can you do here first? What you guys think you can do here? Anyone? Hello? I guess they fell asleep on me, huh? So Jackson and Ella. Hello?
I'm watching like my baby sister right now.
Ah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just taking a piss actually.
Okay. Got it. So just everybody just left and didn't care. Okay.
Yeah, my bad, bro. My bad. But what's the question?
All right. So how can black continue the minority attack here?
I mean, white.
Or white?
B4.
Okay, so if you do b4, a takes b4, a takes b4, and then rook takes a1, and then the queen takes on b4, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you just lose a pawn. So what can you do to prepare it? B4 makes sense.
Rook?
Yeah, where?
B1.
There we go. Rook b1. Yeah, super simple, guys.
She didn't say which rook, but like, interesting.
That's true. Now again, black does nothing. So he does rook a to e1, or e8. So what can you do?
You go b4 now.
Yeah, b4. So b4. So what should you capture with? The pawn, the rook?
The pawn.
Pawn.
Okay. Yeah, the pawn, right? Because you're going to use this as a battering ram. Right? Black is trying to stop b5 with bishop d7, but what can you do now?
You can still push it.
Exactly. So you can just plop it right here. Okay? So it's white has several pieces. If black trades, we're going to make isolated pawns on d5 and also b7, right? And if they don't, we're just going to make a backwards pawn on c6. Now knight to e4. So he ignores it. What should you do here?
Just take the knight.
Take the knight?
Yeah.
What the heck? Why are you taking the knight?
What do you mean, why are you taking the knight?
There's no point in taking the knight. There's no reason to take the knight.
Don't you win a pawn?
You don't win a pawn there.
Yeah, dude. Just takes. Rook can't take your bishop.
Right?
No, knight takes. Jesus. Like,
so knight takes, and then pawn takes, right?
Yeah, and then bishop takes.
Bishop takes, and rook takes.
Queen takes.
Rook takes. You lost the queen.
Oh, yeah, I'm smoking crack, guys.
I got no clue what you're talking about. You need to work on that, because that's a big issue. It's a big issue. If you can't see that knight takes e4 is completely losing, it's a big issue on your calculation here. Okay?
All right, guys.
Now all you have to do is, this is planted, but this isn't doing anything. All you have to do is just take, right? Make your own weakness. Now, we have ideas of knight a4, knight c5, blockading that pawn on c6, right? Now the c pawn is backwards, and what you could do here now is, I believe, is it bishop takes or knight a4? Could be knight a4 first. Nah, it's bishop takes, right? It's bishop takes. Knight e2. Oh yes. So we wanna stop c5 from coming, right? This is the idea. c5 is coming, right? We want to pin this pawn, and we want to activate our pieces to the most active squares. What do you think what we can do here? So c5 is a move, right? But we want to pin it. We want to fix it.
Knight a4.
What?
Can you go knight a4?
So knight a4 doesn't work because it just, I mean, it's the same thing, right? But we want to put another piece there first. Like, we want to pin this. It's not pinning. Knight a4 isn't pinning this pawn.
Oh, rook b6, right?
Yeah, rook b6, rook b6, right? Now, we're activating this rook. Now this pawn is permanently kind of stuck. Now a move like knight a4 and knight to c5 can potentially be played first by taking this knight first, right? He trades off his knight. Right? Now, after this is the end of the example, but I want for you guys to come up with an idea here. What is a game-winning idea? Give me your game plan to win this game. Do you have anything?
Can't you go like bishop b5 because it's pinned, right? And then you can just apply pressure to the pawn.
That's applying pressure, but it's not really attacking anything, right?
There you go.
That's kind of more of like a one move thing.
Interesting. All right, Kevin.
Because if you play bishop to a b5, right? Ideas like this, first doing this and this, could potentially be an issue. Bishop b5 isn't First, let's think about his good pieces and our good pieces. Okay, what's his good piece in this position?
His or ours?
His.
Queen.
Okay. So it's no. So
Okay.
all right. So just because the queen is the most powerful piece doesn't mean it's a piece. Like, doesn't mean I'm talking about that, right? We can't really trade a queen right now. I'm talking about minor pieces.
Oh, for trade?
Yeah. Let's look at the best minor piece in black's position.
Knight,
His knight.
like
What?
knight to
His knight's his best piece, right? Like minor piece.
Yeah, why is that?
e5.
Go with the most amount of space.
Because of e5?
Like he goes into e5, he can like trade with pieces that are equal to him.
No. But you are right about the knight on g6 being the best piece. But they're both kind of bad. They're both really bad. This knight doesn't have a good square. This knight doesn't have a good square. The only square it can go to is knight f8. But it can reroute itself, right? To g5, to e5, potential. Obviously, this doesn't work. But this is the worst piece because this bishop is kind of stuck defending a pawn. Now, when there's backwards pawns or isolated pawns, they're both kind of the same thing. What you want to do is trade these pieces and have the major pieces defend the backwards pawn or the isolated pawn. And why is that? Because a rook is these rooks like to dominate complete files, right? If this rook on e7 is stuck on c7, he is only dominating 2 squares, right? Now, this bishop, it doesn't matter if there's a backwards pawn because this bishop is still kind of controlling these squares. This knight, if the knight was like, let's say, on b4, right? Somehow, this knight somehow got to b4. And it was defended clearly. The knight is still defending and also influencing a little bit of the board, right? But when a major piece like a rook or queen is behind the pawn, it is inhibited because of this pawn on c6. That's why trading pieces like minor pieces are always better when there's a backwards pawn. So now our idea is bishop takes g6, h takes g6. Now what's our next idea? Now that we've identified the best piece that black has, which was the knight on g6, and the worst piece was the bishop on d7, so to keep it, now what's our another plan to put our pieces on the most optimal squares?
You can go knight d5, right?
What was that?
You can go knight d5, right? I mean e5, my bad.
Yeah, knight to e5 is a good square. And after knight e5, it doesn't want to stay on e5. It doesn't want to stay on e5. Where does it actually want to be rerouted to?
C5.
To c5, yeah, to c5, right? Which is knight e5, knight d3, knight c5, right? That's a good square for the knight because it's blockading this pawn, and it's always good to put your knights in front of the blockading pieces. Now, okay, we identified this knight, that this knight needs to go to c5. Now let's talk about this rook. Where does this rook want to go to?
A1, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't want to go to a1 just yet. It wants to go to a7. So that's this is superficial, rook a1, right? But no, we want to go this, maybe this, or this and this, right? With the knight blockading this and the queen being here. so that if the rook trade happens, the queen can take. Right, so those are the winning ideas, winning game plans that you can come up with in this position. This looks like a completely equal position, but the problem is that black is very, very passive, and we're gonna be very, very massive. So let's reiterate what I mentioned. Taking away the best piece, the knight on g6, bishop takes. Okay, identifying where the knight on f3 wants to stand. Knight e5, knight d3, knight c5. Okay, now identifying what this rook wants to do. Rook a1, rook a7, and then bring this rook, instead of attacking this pawn. This pawn is actually kind of gluing everything together, right? Or it's kind of gluing black's pieces all stuck. If I take this pawn away from them, this can potentially open up the bishop, open up the rooks. I don't want to take this pawn necessarily. I kind of noticed that this position is very passive for black, and instead we use this pawn as a liability for them. This is kind of like a wedge between them, where it's very hard for them to break out, and moves like rook b7, rook to a1 to a7, and the queen on b3 or b4 could be potentially very strong in this position. Now, let's go over a game that implements the minority attack, which is a game against Benko and Taimanov, right? Both of them have openings named after them, so they're pretty strong. Like the Benko Gambit, which comes from the Benoni, and the Taimanov variation, which comes from the Sicilian, right? So they're both very prominent figures. Now, watch how white is able to implement the minority attack, and potentially this could give you inspiration for your own games to come up with your own strategies similar to this one. So this is kind of like a Neo-Catalan. Neo-Catalan is kind of where the d4 hasn't been pushed, but c4 has been pushed, right? A Catalan setup is actually with d4, but this is a Neo. And knight c6 here in this position normally is kind of weird in this position because you don't want this pawn behind the knight. But in the Catalan, this setup is actually pretty okay. It's kind of similar to a Chigorin variation, which is kind of high level for you guys to know, but just wanted to mention that. So we get a Catalan now, and now we're getting this position. Again, we're getting this position, right? We bring our rook to the semi-open file to kind of target this, right? This is potentially on c6 can potentially become a backwards pawn, right? Here, b4, right? b4 in this position. So instead of even playing a3, there's no reason to play a3 and slow it down. We can just go b4. We can already go. We can just go. And a move like a3, what should you guys do here after a3? Ella, what should you do here in this position?
Black?
It's white to move if you were paying attention.
Yes.
Yes.
A3.
After a6.
Oh, A6.
Yeah.
6.
So after a6, right? After a6, what should black or white do here in this position?
You could do the minority.
Yes. So tell me what move.
3A. Or A3.
A3?
Yeah.
Okay, so what does A3 do with that minority attack? How does A3 help with the minority attack?
Would defend B4.
Yeah, but there's no point in defending this because it's not attacked. What do we want to do in the minority attack?
Uh, like it's like when one player attacks an opponent's majority with their pawn minority.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Sure. So how does a3 attack the opponent's majority if a3 isn't attacking anything?
Could do. Oh, could you do 5?
What was that?
5?
5?
B5.
B5. Okay. Now, here. Our threat is B5 here, right? So then he takes, we will take, right? Now, after A3, B5 is not possible no more because after A takes, knight takes doesn't work because you just lose a full piece, right? You just lose a full pawn if you play B5, right? We want to play B5, but how can we try to force it?
A4?
There we go. A4, yeah. A4 is played. We're still doing the minority attack B5, right? Now, knight F5. He's just trying to make some counterplay on the king side. And then we just play B5. Rook E8. We take. So, if they don't take, because they don't want to make a weakness here, these two weaknesses, instead, we just take. Now, what have we accomplished in this position? Jackson, what do you think we have accomplished in this position? Jackson?
Oh shit, my bad. I was like talking and then like I was muted. But I said it created a backwards pawn on c6 and like
Yeah.
our knight could potentially go to c5.
So, yeah, a move like there's a backwards pawn on c6, but not only that, we also made this a weakness too. So this is an isolated pawn on a6. So the c6, the knight can potentially go here.
And we can control the b file, right?
Well, yeah, we can control the b file. Good job. Now e3, knight e2, queen to d6, knight to f4. So we're just trying to maneuver our knight here. And now h4, okay? Now we shouldn't be very scared of this position. We shouldn't take. Why shouldn't we take? Ella, why shouldn't we take that pawn? I'm asking Ella.
F pawn?
Why shouldn't we take this pawn on h4? Like, why shouldn't we take?
Because the light knight can fork.
The what?
Like black's knight can fork.
No, it wouldn't fork. It would just be a trade.
No, like
right?
if black took back.
Right? It's still just a trade. So why wouldn't I take if it's just a trade? A complete equal trade. What's the problem with that?
Because we don't gain anything?
No. So you need to think about your king's safety. You need to think about your king's safety. If we take,
Yeah.
moves like knight takes.
King and like
Look at this king now. Right? Potentially, if this knight wasn't here, like let's say knight d3, queen g6 and bishop h3 is already an idea. Bishop can't take because the king is pinned behind this bishop, right? So we don't need to do something so drastic. We don't need to take. But what we could do, instead, we can close down his attack. So he's trying to attack me. How can I close this down?
your pawn to g4.
Yeah. Like
Attack the knight.
normally this isn't like very, very good to play, but in this position, you can't really crack me open. If I close this whole position, right? If I close this whole position, you have no attack. You have no king side attack. And if black does not have any counterplay on the king side, then all the counterplay is going to be potentially on the queen side. And when you're playing, you shouldn't be focused on your weak side, right? like black shouldn't potentially put all his pieces on his weak side because this is very weak. He should be trying to attack on the king side, but this whole place is kind of broken down. So g5 here in this position, knight d3 follows the idea as the minority attack with knight c5, right? But a better move would have been just knight h5. And now you notice that this position is actually kind of dire for black, where this knight is in an outpost that you don't want. And if you do something like knight g7, maybe even knight takes, queen takes, and knight e4 could be an issue. Attacking this and also preparing e4, bishop takes e4. But here in this position, play h3, we lock everything down, right? And now, what do you think we should do now as white? What should we do? What do you think we should do?
I think get our knight on the outpost and like create an attack on the queen side.
Okay, what's a move here first? So we want to target that c6 pawn. How can we put more pressure on that c6 pawn?
Like immediately you can go queen c2.
Yes. So queen c2 is actually a very good move here because this connects rooks and it comes with tempo, right? We're attacking this and now black has to respond. Black responds with bishop d7 and now we do another move that comes with tempo. So knight c5 wouldn't have been coming with tempo if we had played it right now. Right away it doesn't come with tempo. Queen c2, bishop d7, now knight c5 is tempo. Because if you do something like, I don't know, rook a7, right? Knight takes, and now we're winning this pawn, right? We're winning the pawn on c6. So this forces black to defend the pawn on c6 with his rook. And again, remember I told you that when you have a backwards pawn, or when you have an isolated pawn, it's best to trade the minor pieces and keep the major pieces, because you notice that this rook was influencing this whole square. Now the rook has been restricted to 2 squares, right? Because it's stuck defending a pawn on c6. It's stuck looking at granite, right? It can't do anything here. Now after rook b1, now the rook is changing sides. Now you can potentially control this file, and this is the only file that the rooks can have. Like this is the only open file in the position where you could double, right? You can double here. Now here after bishop to f8, because he does not want to fall for knight takes d7, here's a very instructional move. What can white do here to kind of lock down black's position here in this position?
I think like rook b6, right?
Okay, rook b6, but what's another move? There's another move that's even better. And it's very instructional. Yes.
a5, right?
Yeah, good job. Good spot, Jackson. Because look at a5 now. Okay? This bishop is completely locked with these pawns. This pawn can never be freed. And now this is a forever target for the knight on c5. Now this rook is forced to defend this. Right? The second this rook moves, knight takes. So we have made 2 permanent weaknesses in this position. Now after rook to c7, now your idea of rook b6 comes to life, right? It makes a lot more sense. Now the rook on b6 is targeting the pawn on a6, pressuring the pawn on c6, and then preparing to double on b1. Now after rook a7, because he has to defend the pawn on a6, because this pawn is moving. This pawn is a big passer. Now we double. And now a move like knight to e7 is played. And now how can we apply more pressure on this a6? How can we apply more pressure on this a6? Look at pieces that aren't doing anything in this position and try to apply more pressure.
Bishop f1, right?
Yes, bishop f1, right? This bishop is blocked by these two pawns, kind of making this bishop kind of dull. When you reroute the bishop, now it's made a new role. It can even go to d3 in some positions, but we've already attacked the pawn on a6 sufficiently. And now knight to c8 is done. Rook takes, bishop takes. And after queen to d8, he's pressuring the pawn on a5. We just take the knight. Because that is the best piece in black's position, because it's a closed structure. And how do I know this is a closed structure?
Because the bishops are blocked in by the pawns.
Yes, exactly. Both bishops are blocked behind each pawn. So both of them are pretty bad pieces here. So taking the knight is similar to the last game, or the last example that I showed, where bishop took on g6, right? Because the knight was the only piece that was doing any type of activity, right? So then you just play a6. And after bishop to e7, we just play rook b7. So why can't he plays queen to d8? Why can't he just take the knight? Why can't he just take the knight here?
Honestly, I don't know.
Because of the pawn on g5. If you take the knight, I'm not retaking. Because if I recapture, you just win my pawn back, right? I'll play knight to g5. Now queen to h7 is a threat. And how do you stop that? If you play king to f8, you just take now. And that comes with check. And let's look at, how could we stop this, right? If you play something like f6 here, right? You still have queen h7. You can't really stop it. Another move is just sacking your queen, which is actually the best. Because if you do something like, because the threat is actually like, let's say we take this pawn, right? The threat is queen h7, king f8, rook takes, bishop takes, and mate. Right, that's the whole threat. So knight takes g5 is the threat. So you can't take the knight on c5. Now queen to d8, a7, bishop f8, and queen f5. Right? Now this is a very, very crazy looking move here. Here in this position, what do you think? Or after bishop e7. Here in this position, what do you think white can do here? Because he went back, and then he had to go back to defend the pawn on g5, right? Now, what could you do here? This is a whole tactic, and it's very, very pretty.
You can go, can't you stack the rook, right, and then take on g5 with the knight?
Unfortunately, there is no mate. Right? I like the idea, though. It's a good idea. But there's a cooler idea. It's sacking something. It's 2 sacks in a row.
Knight e6?
Okay, that's the follow-up after that. But That 96 is nice, right? 96 is nice. But first you want to prepare 96. Because if you play 96, right? The bishop is still covering this. So we don't have queen h7 check.
So you
Right?
sacked the rook first and then picked him. I mean, then 96, right?
Okay, so if we do this doesn't make any sense because
I'm so confused. I don't know.
so 96 pawn takes. The queen can't go to h7 because the bishop is on e7. It's kind of stopping the rook.
Oh,
But how can we
okay,
move the
okay,
bishop?
so knight g5.
Yeah, knight g5. So nice job finding 96, but knight g5 is the follow-up first because after knight bishop to g5, 96, queen f6, and it looks like we just lost a piece here, right? We just have they have 3, we have 2, right? But what's our final move that kind of just ends the game?
You have rook b8, right?
Rook b8, no. Rook b8, he can just take.
Oh, you can fork, right?
Yeah, fork-in time, right? And then you just, everything else is just losing. Right here. Ella, after bishop d7, what can white do to win a pawn here? Is Ella asleep?
Here, I'm just thinking.
Oh, that's good, that's good.
Knight takes d5.
There we go. Good job, Ella. Good job. Knight takes d5, right? And now knight takes f6 is an issue, blah, blah, blah. Everything's an issue here. Next move is this, right? So this is just game over after this. All right. Now, after, this kind of reminded me of the London, right? So, Jackson, you love the London, right?
Yeah.
You
First
absolutely
opening
loved it.
alarm.
Yep. So it's kind of similar to this, right? So we get to this minority attack here. Now this is a minority attack again. We're gonna have 2 pawns versus these, but the difference here is that when you have a minority attack, you can also attack and sack your material. So Ella, why do you think bishop takes a3 is possible here in this position? Why do you think bishop takes a3 is possible, Ella?
I don't know. Wouldn't pawn just take back?
Yeah, but what do we have after pawn takes?
We have a minority.
No. What can we do after?
Knight on c3.
Yeah, knight takes on c3, right? And we have 3 pawns. So we win 3 pawns for a bishop. How many pawns is a bishop worth?
3.
3, right? And not only that, I would say black is completely winning here, right? And why, Ella? Why is black completely winning, even though he gave up his full bishop for just 3 pawns? So why is black completely winning here?
Because we're more developed and we have more points.
If you look at this, he's more developed, and if you were to count the material, we have the same amount of material because we have 3 pawns for a bishop, and we're down a bishop. So why is this winning?
Because of our pawn setup?
Well, it's because of these connected passed pawns. Right? When a pawn is on like the 3rd file, it's worth as much as a rook. So when there's 2 connected pawns like this and not able to be taken, those 2 pawns are worth 5 points of material. Right? It's a very crazy concept. But it's because these pawns are gonna be pushing, and it's gonna be pushing back the opponent. So like if you look at this whole position, rook a2, You're just pushing back the whole opponents here, right? How can you, right? You can't really stop these two pawns. And that's why we mean it's worth as much as a rook, because the rook has to eventually sack itself. And here this is just a resigner because knight to c1 or knight c2. Right? Now this is just an example of the minority attack and applying it with sacrificing pieces to get two connected passers and to win the game from that. Alright guys, I think this is I still have a little bit more, but we can end the lesson from here just because I feel like anything more would get you guys too tired. Hello?
Hello, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So we're all good to go, okay? So nice to meet you,
Okay.
Michaela. Nice to meet you, Ella. And good to see
Michaela's
you
my
again, Jackson. Yeah, I know. I've met
speak.
Ella, but saying hi.
No, I'm saying you like
Hi,
Michaela's not
Kevin.
here anymore.
What's up?
You're like, nice to meet you, Michaela, but she's not here.
Yeah, I know. It's just I'm recording, so I was just saying that.
Yeah, forgot about that.
But
No,
yeah, too bad Colin didn't jump in, but I'm gonna be making an opening for Colin, and then I'm gonna help you out, Jackson, with your London. And I still don't
I play
know.
with Queen's Gambit more than a London.
Wait, what was that?
I play with Queen's Gambit more than London.
Oh, now you play Queen's Gambit now?
I've always played Queen's Gambit.
Oh, I
I've
thought you.
always played G4. I knew the London, then the Queen's Gambit, and the Catalan.
Okay, so yeah, I remember the Catalan for you, but yeah, I'll make
Sometimes
a
I'll play
London one
that,
just
like-
for you because you're a little bit more experienced on that. I don't know
Alright.
Alex's style of play, so it's kind of hard for me to figure out an opening for him yet. Because I still need to see him in person. With Ella, I already have something simple for her to play with and kind of learn it. I don't know Michaela,
Okay.
so I don't know Michaela's opening, like her style. So I don't. It could potentially be the same thing as Ella's. I'm thinking of
We really need opening for black too.
yeah, we can.
Because for white, we're definitely better than for black.
Yeah, that's true. So we can look for both of that. I just don't know how Alex's like play style is, so I can't really make an opening until I see how he plays.
Mhm.
But yeah,